Hello everyone. Today we are going to start working on creating the existing features model for the project that we started. So hopefully you've watched or understand how to unpack the servRD file and create all the necessary files. The first thing we need to do is go ahead and go to FDOT and create file. And I want to create in the roadway discipline, roadway design files, I want to make a model RD file. And I'm just going to set this as 00 here for a second. I really just want to get this file created, and then I'm going to go exit out of ORD and change the name real quick, and then we'll pop back in and start doing that. So again, we just want to make sure that everything down here makes sense. We've got our correct county and the proper coordinate system, so I know I'm using the same data set as I was using before, and that is the North Florida. So I'll go ahead and create this file and rename it and open up in the newly created file. So once you get that model RD00 file created, go ahead and close out of ORD and then open up your file explorer and find that file and rename it to model RD00_EX features, just like that. And then go ahead and open up that file in ORD. So that's where we are now. We should have a blank file in here, and we want to add a couple references in here to get started. So we'll add go to the survey folder here. And if you were with me last time, we created this GDTM RD file that has that complex terrain model in it. And then we also want to add the topo RD01 that we created there as well. And we'll go ahead and add those. Let's go zoom fit. We've got everything in here. We will go ahead and set this as the active terrain model because we are going to be setting profiles to elements in here. So we will need that as the active terrain model. And since I did that, the default 3D should be created. I'm going to go ahead and hit F4 here. F4 brings up 4 views. Optionally, you could right click and hold and use the view control and do this one right here. That does the exact same thing. So I'm just shrink these guys down so that I can see a little more. And so my intent here is to potentially be able to see any profiles that I need to create here, and then eventually open up some dynamic cross-section views over there so that I can see what exactly I'm creating with these existing features. So let's go ahead and just kind of get oriented here. I'm using the rotate view, and my method is 2 points, and I'm just kind of snapping to points here to get my view rotated more towards to be horizontal with this roadway. And we can start by coming into FDOT, and there are these create existing features. This tool up in here, where did it go? Always on the other screen. So really what this does, at least what I've seen, is it applies some level filters to the file and turns certain things on and off. It can be helpful if you want to see certain things. So in this case, we're probably going to start with the pavement. I'm going to do shoulders just because that will leave the shoulders and this miscellaneous asphalt / driveway on. We could even come in here and do miscellaneous pavement just to make sure that's on as well. And you can see that's just applying a filter to this file to turn certain things on and off. So unfortunately, it does kind of turn things off that we might want to see, like our terrain model. And it will start turning off things live in this file, so be aware of that as well. You kind of like juggle between that, turning things on and off just so you can kind of see, but you can see it turns off a bunch of stuff that I don't really need to see, like the pavement markings and the signs and all of that extra stuff. And so I'm going to do what I usually do in my files. I'm going to set the priority to -1. So if you don't have priority, you can again right click up here and make sure priority is checked. And you can only set priority on 2D files because 3D is dictated by the third dimension of the file. Priority is basically like if you're looking down like we are at the top of the file, it's layers. So if I put something on -1 layer, it's going to be a little bit lower than 0 layer. 1 would be on top of 0, 2 would be on top of 1, and so on and so forth. So it's how everything stacks up on top of things. And so if something is on top of another reference, then it will block the reference below it. So I've got that. And I also just wanted, let's put some transparency on here so that things are a little scaled back so I can kind of see what I'm drawing here. So the first thing I want to do is I want to start creating some pavement here, and I want to close off essentially some of these shapes. So you can see, like, figure out like, okay, where's my pavement shape and how could I start closing this shape off? So I want to start using miscellaneous. So I should start typing miscellaneous in here. I've been using miscellaneous 7 is a good level. So that's red. It's got a little bit of thickness to it. You're going to be able to see it pretty well. And then we can go to our drawing toolbar and just start placing some lines and closing off. Oops, a little extra line there. Closing off some of these. So I've closed that off. And one thing I like to do is also close off all of these side streets so that I can make those separately. So here we'll close this off, and this is a little bit funky. We've got this arc here that doesn't come in tangent to this, so that when I draw a line from that point to that point, we're going to have a little overlap there. But if you come up here to your modify and trim, you can select this line and trim it to that line. And since we're drawing dumb lines here, which is what I call them, just simple lines, we don't have any intervals. They're just there to close things off. So we'll continue. We've got to kind of do the same thing with this one. I'm just trying to close off as much as I can here, trim that up. And we just keep going down the line. And obviously we have some islands, I guess. I think this one is intended to be a traffic separator, and this one is intended to be a curbed median with some grass in the middle. In reality, this one is a curbed median with, I believe, like concrete pavement in the middle, but we'll treat it as a traffic separator when we get to that point, just so that we can highlight how to do a curbed median, because we've got a couple of those, but also how to make this look like a traffic separator. And so we'll continue kind of closing these off. So you can see, like, I'm just closing this off where the pavement asphalt ends and this driveway begins. So that, to me, is signifying some sort of change in the pavement. And then here you can see, like, I don't have a line that keeps going here, but typically we're not going to be constructing this far out. So all I'll do is just grab here to that endpoint, the shortest endpoint, and use my snap to go perpendicular to the line across from it. Close that off. And we'll do the same thing over here. You could come across here too. That one's closer than that one is. Either way is really an option. Then when I get to the end here, I'm just going to preemptively close off that shoulder. And I'm going to close that off and close this off. So now that we've got things kind of closed off, we should have a shape in here that we can make. So now I want to use miscellaneous 4 because I want to use a different color. And I'm going to make this a little bit transparent and -1 on the priority so that my red lines will always sit on top, and you'll see that in a second. So now we want to try and create a region. So that's in this group. We're still in the drawing toolbar. That's over here in this groups. And we want to flood, which means we're basically going to like try to create a shape based on a closed shape. So I don't want to fill this with anything. I don't want it to be, I just want the boundary. I don't want any like color in the middle or anything. If you choose opaque, it will fill that area with this green color. We don't really need that. We just need the boundary. I want to turn on keep original because if I don't, it will delete those red lines, and I want those to stay. There's a few options how you're going to create this region. And so sometimes you might want to locate these interior shapes, but in this instance, I don't want to locate those because I'm going to remove those from the terrain model that I create later using a different method. And so we'll just have it ignore interior shapes for now. The gap, typically I just use 0.1. You can kind of start playing with this, maybe change it to 1 or 2 or something like that if you're having a hard time getting a region to create. Really, that's just like the maximum gap between lines it will allow, so that, and then the shape will still form. And then sometimes I like to turn this dynamic area locate on so that when I hover over area, for some reason it's not. There we go. So you can see it. It helps to make sure that you're fully zoomed out and you can see the entire region that you're trying to encapsulate. And like if I'm zoomed in here, it doesn't want to find that region. So if you're having that issue, this tool can be kind of finicky sometimes when you're dealing with really large areas. So just hit element selection again, make sure you're zoomed all the way out, and then come in here. And now you should be able to select that region. And if I click in there, I've got the boundary. Okay. So let's introduce you to the terrain toolbar, and we're going to come under here under create and additional methods, and we're going to create a clipped terrain model. So you just pay attention to your prompts on your cursor, and we're going to locate the reference terrain model, which is the complex terrain model from our GDTM. And then our clipping element is that shape we just created. We'll reset. And then once you do that, make sure you come over here and make sure you have this DTM existing pavement feature model selected, and you can just let it default to this default name. And as you create more and more elements on this feature definition, it will increment this. So the next one will be 1, the next one will be 2, the next one will be 3, etc. So if we click here, horizontal offset, we don't want it to offset this at all. We just want it to clip straight from there. And the final one is the external. So I want to clip this terrain, everything external to this element. So I want, basically means like I want the final product to be inside this box. If we go ahead and click, now we've got that. Okay. So that worked right now. We can see it's following our boundary. And the next thing we need to do is come in here and grab these medians. So what I'll do is come into my references and turn off this default 3D for a second so I can grab these medians. And with these, we're thinking ahead and thinking which feature definition that we want these to be on. And for right now, I'm just going to put them both. I'm just going to copy these in here. So we're just going to, I will select them, select, right click and hold, choose copy, and just snap to a point. You can see now I've got all the elements, snap right back on the same point. Now they're in the file. So you can leave these selected because now we want to attach a feature to them. We want to create a rule that applies a feature to them. So let's go up here to the feature definition toolbar. And we want to go linear, existing features, pavement, pavement asphalt existing. Make sure that's here. Make sure to turn it on. Go to geometry. And we want to create civil rule features. So this is going to basically turn these dumb lines into civil geometry and apply the feature definition that we have chosen here. So I can go here. It's already seeing that I've got the 4 elements selected. If I data point, just left click, now these are ruled elements and they have the pavement asphalt existing feature applied to them. So now what we can do is turn this back on. And I want to go back to the terrain. And we'll do the edit. And I want to add a feature to this terrain model. So I'm going to click that terrain model first. Then I want to click all of these elements that I just put in here. We'll reset. And I want them to be a hole. I want to create a hole there. This isn't going to work because I've got to add a profile to those elements. So that's part of the reason that I opened this view, part of the reason why I featureized all of these things and made them civil geometry so I could come here. So if I, whoops, let's go back. So I accidentally clicked up here. So that's maybe a good thing to see. If you ever want to go back, you can right click or you can left click up in the view attributes, click this down and go back to the default model. We'll just straighten this back out again. Now, if I hover over this element, I click it, wait for the context menu to come up and grab this second button here, Open Profile Model, I want to actually click in another view this time. You can see because I've set this terrain model as the active terrain model, I have the existing ground profile along this line. I can go ahead and set that as the active profile. You can see over here, it's created a 3D portion of this 2D line. And I just need to do that for the other 4 elements that I'm going to add here. I really wish there was a button that would just be, set active profile from active terrain model. That's been like one thing I've wanted for a long time. But there's not, so you just have to go through this. Okay, now that I've got those 4, I can go back here and add that as a feature now because it has a 3D, it is now a 3D element. Create a hole, and boom. So for whatever reason, when I make that change, it creates all of these crazy lines out here. And I'm not really sure why when initially it worked out just fine. So what I suggest doing in this case is kind of closing off more of these shapes and trying to eliminate areas where it's trying to connect across here. We can see like maybe because of the edge method is still on sliver, we could try max triangle length again and maybe go down to like 100. And see, it starts getting rid of some of these bigger triangles. But the best way to go about getting rid of these triangles is to further close off this shape. And because these are existing elements, it doesn't really matter how you put them together. So we'll come in here over in the 3D view and let's just delete this for a second. And I also want to delete this shape. And I did all that just so that you could see what can happen when you add those additional features and how your terrains can kind of blow up. And this is some ways that you can go about fixing it. So actually, I'm going to Control Z again because I'm just going to drag this down here so that I can select that later as I go back to my drawing here. I want to be able to smart match. So I'm going to smart match to my red line so I get back there. And we'll turn off this feature because I just want to draw regular lines again. And we're going to use a different tool this time. So under placement, if you right click this multi-line tool here, you can go to construct line at active angle. And the active angle I want is 0, 0, so that's great. And if I select the endpoint of that line right there, it's going to start making a line that follows that angle exactly. So really all I'm doing is just extending that line out like that. And then I'll do the same thing over here. And the same thing over here. And then I'll use the trim command to trim that to the end, trim that, and trim that. So now I've basically closed off these areas. And we've already got that closed off. So we've more accurately closed things off. You can see everything got turned back on again. So you can go ahead and create existing features again. Let's do medians, and then we've got to toggle back to miscellaneous pavement. And you can see it turns off my GDTMRD again and the two miscellaneous levels. So you just turn those back on and then turn that off. For whatever reason, it does that again. So you can see like that tool sometimes is more of a pain than it helps, but you just have to know how to manipulate it. And maybe you don't have to use it very much. I only had to use it again because I accidentally put the profile view up here. But since I left this shape down here, I can come to my drawing and smart match again and grab that. And now I'm on the same thing. So once I've got it, I can delete that. And then we'll create region again in the same way we did before. We want to ignore those interior shapes. And I've got my region. And then just to show this again, we'll create that clipped terrain model. Existing terrain, clipping element, click through all this stuff, make sure we've got an external. We've created that again, and then we'll go ahead and add those features to that terrain model. Make them a whole. And we've still got some stuff here where it's trying to clip out of there. So maybe let's take a look at this if this fixes it. Instead of being sliver, we can do max triangle length. Let's maybe make it like 50. See if that fixes some of the issues. So that starts fixing some of those issues, but not all of them. And so basically our last resort here is to come in and we want to edit model. And I'm told this only works in later versions. So if you're using 10.12, you're all good. I don't know if it works in 11. I don't think it works in 10. So just be mindful of that. Previously, you had to like drop the terrain model and then edit it and then reapply or turn it back on or something like that. But now you can edit a featureized terrain model. So really, we just want to select the terrain model you want to edit. And I'm on here on this delete triangles by line. And if you start just drawing a line, you can see the triangles that it's going to delete. So I'm just trying to delete as many of these triangles in here as I can. So we're just kind of whittling this away. And if you've got a couple left over like that, it's not the end of the world. It's just existing. But let's just see if we can get rid of as many of these as we can. Okay. And so if you ever wanted to delete those, if you hit the delete edit button, it turns on and you can see these lines. And if you click on one of these lines, it will delete that edit and bring those triangles back in. So I'm just going to click off here, and it might be a good idea to every time you edit a certain area, maybe get out of the tool and save. Because I did have a time when I was working on this where it crashed on me. So just be aware of that. I think it's kind of a finicky tool. So we'll just do this again, edit this. We'll draw lines there, there. And then I'm going to be daring here and get rid of these as well. And this one right here. And then Control S for save. Save often, just in case something happens and it crashes, especially when you're editing that terrain model. But now you can see I've got a nice clean terrain model there. Nothing's flying out. I've got the holes made. Yeah, see, it looks like it started creating this in here again, which I didn't notice the first time I did this. So if I come in here and edit this again, let's do this. It's not triangulating that surface. If I do that, it's going to break that. So here's maybe where I want to go and delete that and bring those triangles back. And instead, let's turn off this. And I'm going to bring this in. Okay. turn this back on. Let's add a rule to that. Create civil feature rule. And let's profile that. And let's see what happens when I add a hole to that using that. Terrain, add feature. Okay, so now it's created that hole. Now I should be able to come in here and edit this model and get rid of that stuff. There. Now it's looking better. So now we've got that removed. Yeah. So that looks better. So those are some of the things that you have to do with some of these more interesting shapes, is just play around with them. That's a really good exercise to see, is just how you can manipulate all of this stuff. And I'm going to save again just to be safe. Now, as I was going through further parts of this exercise, I realized I was getting some issues right here with this terrain model. And you can see it's trying to create this piece across here to like connect these two together. So I wanted to go over one more option that we have to try and further kind of control this terrain model so that things like that don't happen. So I'm going to delete this one again. And I know you're probably like, oh, you're deleting it again. But it's good to kind of see how all of these things react. And again, I'll just drag this one down so I can select that later. And we're going to come up here and select. And what I want to do is, instead of creating those holes like I was creating before, I'm just going to try and create like a left and a right side of this essentially. So we're going to cut that off there. We'll cut this off here. And then maybe I will just right here, we'll come across and we'll do something like this. So now I've got some even more segregated shapes, basically. That should kind of help clean up some of the issues that we're seeing. You know, if you really wanted to get crazy with it, you could even come in here and start closing off some of these shapes up here. So if we were to do this to here, and then there to there, or something like that, you could maybe do that too, and that would probably stop you from having to edit that terrain in those little weird spots right there. So let's give that a whirl and see if that works. It's never a bad idea to have too many of these. Ultimately, they're all going to, like, you know, butt up right next to each other anyway, so it doesn't really matter too much. Obviously, you don't want to have too many, but, you know, within reason. I think this is reasonable to kind of, you know, show these turn lanes coming off here, or we could do something maybe like this that's just connects to like the shoulder line, so it's a little straighter. That probably makes a little more sense. I think that looks a little better. So now we can start creating those shapes. So we've got a few more shapes to create now. And let's go ahead and create a region. So you can see it's doing like the left side there and the right side there. And I'll zoom out and make sure I can get this whole thing in here. So let's just start creating all of these extra shapes in here. So now I've got all of those created. Let's go ahead and do this one too. So get my red line. Do it from like this point. Actually, we got to connect all of these. Close these off. Close those off. Let's just go from the midpoint there to there. Grab our green line, make some more regions. So now you can see I don't have to worry about adding any holes to my templates, and I can delete this line too. So let's go back to here, to the terrain, and we'll start creating our clipped terrain models. So create clipped terrain model, locate that. And it's a good idea to just do these one at a time. And you can go pretty quick. Just keep staying the command. Terrain model, clipping element, click, click, click. Terrain model, clipping element. So you can see it's not creating all of those slivers and everything flying out. It's a much better terrain that we're getting, and it requires much less editing. Maybe a little more time to set it up, but a lot less time editing later. Nothing going crazy there. And we don't, and it, remember, the issue arose when we added that feature to it, the whole feature. That's when everything kind of exploded. And so in this instance, we don't have to add another feature to these things, and we won't have that problem. So now I can just add all of these. And now I've got all of those created, which is great. So that's just for this street. We can kind of look at, you'd probably end up doing the same thing with this one. So probably what I would do here is, let's just go ahead and do, got to grab drawing, and we'll get down our red line. So let's start closing some of these off. So we'll just go from here. Maybe I'll just go down perpendicular. And then let's go from here maybe, or here up to one of these areas. That, close that off. And sometimes I have had problems with like these points coming up. So maybe it's a good idea to just come here, little down, go perpendicular like this. And then this one's the intersection tool, trimmed intersection. So you select two lines and they trim them together like that. So maybe that's a little better idea if you're having troubles with those corners like that. So we've got this shape already created. We're starting to create that. And so like I did before on the other side, maybe we'll come here where it's starting to get widened out, and we'll just come, let's just snap straight across to here. And then we can do that. So now I should have three shapes in here. Let's see how this works out. So we've got that region, and that region. And then we build our terrain, create clip terrain model, choose the terrain, clipping element. See how our shapes are all nice and clean, following the lines that we want them to follow. Looks good. Great. So now we've got all that pavement. And so as you go up this way, it's pretty much just a straight shot. That one's pretty simple. So we'll just stop there. If you want to continue trying some of this stuff out, you can progress up the road and fill in the rest of this pavement. But that's pretty much it for creating those. And you can see how making these more manageable shapes helps in the final terrain creation. And so I think it's good to see the progression from just doing one giant shape, creating a hole, and then showing how to edit the template if you do have those issues. Sometimes you run into situations where no matter what you do with segregating your shapes like this, you still end up with something weird happening. So it's good to see that you can change it from sliver to changing it to minimum triangle length, or being able to edit the terrain model, and how to add that whole feature as well, but also understanding what happens with that. So the next thing we need to do is go ahead and apply a surface template to all of these terrain models that we've created, and we'll do that next. All right, so let's go about adding a surface template to that. So I want to go to my corridors, and I want to look at my template library. So if you go ahead and click that, what does it open up? So it's opening up the default template library in here. And we can start looking at some of these surface templates in here. Where is it? Sorry, existing feature templates. And so since this project was created in an older version of ORD, if we click on some of these things, we can see that this line's white. And that's because it's looking for a feature definition that's no longer found, or it's not in the same place as it used to be. So it automatically sets it to no feature definition, which can be a problem. So if we click on this in mesh and we go to XS in existing, I think it's because that feature definition used to be just under XS, but they dumped everything into this existing folder. So if I select curb EX, everything works. But what if there are issues with all of these that I'm not aware of? And so a good idea might be to just go ahead and, why don't we just delete this folder from here? That might be a little scary, but we can go ahead and go to Tools, Template Library Organizer. And what we want to do is we can take templates from another library. So this is called an ITL file. And if I go to this little button here, I can start searching for other template libraries. So you can see here's the one that I'm using right now. But DOT delivers a template library in their Organization Civil, FDOT. If you come down here to template library, there's the Civil FDOT ORD. If you open that one up, we should be able to find existing feature templates. So we can open that up and be really careful when you're dragging this thing across, because as soon as you drag this across and touch one of these folders, it expands the folder out and it'll start expanding folders out very quickly. So I usually try to grab this and then go right up the middle and then just touch it right here on the main folder. And so that creates that existing features template under here. And now I've got all the brand new feature templates in here from FDOT 10.12. If we go ahead and hit OK and save, you can go and see that that curb existing works. Here's all these other ones. There's actually a couple more existing feature templates that we can use in here. So the one we're concerned with right now is this pavement asphalt existing. And this is the first time I'm looking at it and it's blue. So that's interesting. Pavement asphalt EX. They must have changed the color of that in 10.12. Typically this is red. And if you've been doing the example and looked at that previous pavement asphalt existing, it was red. So it could be that this has changed, but that's the right thing. And I guess asphalt in the design templates is blue and the base is red. So I don't know if we're supposed to do 2, but it looks like all they have is pavement asphalt existing. So you can look down here, and so the origin point is up here. So this is basically going to follow the top of your terrain model that you created. And then down here is the depth of that pavement section. And so it has this label on here that we can change. But this will depend on when you go ahead and look at, you're probably going to get core asphalt or pavement corings that will tell you how thick the asphalt layer is, how thick the base layer is, and you combine those two together to figure out how thick your total pavement layer is, because it's your asphalt plus your base. And once you get into doing quantities and stuff like that, that entire thickness, the asphalt, existing asphalt plus the existing base, is removed using the clearing and grubbing pay item. So it's important that we model all of that as existing, so that we're showing that as being removed under clearing and grubbing. So for now, for an example, I'm just going to say that my total thickness is 1 foot, which is pretty typical. I know I have a project that maybe it's 13 inches or something like that. But what this label allows you to do is go in there and modify this depth based on the situation. So maybe this road that we're doing right now is a foot, but the other road that goes off, towards the top of the screen, maybe that's 14 inches or something like that. So you could come in here and change that, and we'll show you how to do that in a second. So let's just save that, and you'll see that the template drops down and only one side dropped down. So another thing you can do is if you come into the active template and go to the parametric constraints, which is what that label is a parametric constraint, you can click on this and it'll show you all the points that are using that label. So a label allows you to make a parametric constraint for it, basically. They should just call them the same thing, because that's a label and a parametric constraint are pretty much the same thing. So if you double click on this, you can see it's bringing up that default value of 1 that I set. And if I hit OK, it changes all of them. So let's say I wanted to change that to 13 inches. I can type minus 13 over 12 for 13 inches. Hit OK, and it changes them both. I can go back and do -1, and it goes back. So that's a pretty handy thing when you're trying to adjust things. And it's a good idea to remember to continue using the same label over and over again for things that are the same. Like you're going to have several points that control depths of pavement or depths of sidewalk. And it's advisable to keep using that same label so that you can easily adjust things like that, either in the template or using a parametric constraint. So let's go ahead and save that and close. Okay, now we're ready to start applying that surface template to all of our terrain models that we've created, all the existing pavement terrain models. So we can click this here and wait for the context menu to come up. Go to templates, apply surface template. If you don't have anything in here, or if it's the wrong template, it's always a good idea, even when you're doing this, to just to click here and make sure you're looking at your template library here that you're using, existing feature templates, and we're looking for pavement, asphalt, existing. And we don't need a boundary, and reaffirming the template we're using, and data point to accept. And now we have that surface template there. We can see we've got some depth. And we can go ahead and just continue doing this to all the terrain models in here. And since I have it selected already, we should be good to go. You can just quickly zip through here and add all those surface templates to our terrain models. And I'm purposely leaving that other road without a surface template for right now, because we'll go over that in a second. Something I want to hit on from what I said previously about the labels and parametric constraints. Once we get all these added in here, we've got that. And you can kind of come over here in the default 3D and see that there's this default level that gets selected whenever you hover over. And the way this was explained to me is that surface template basically has what they call like a wrapper. Think of it like a clear plastic wrapper around the entire thing. And that's that default template, is that clear plastic wrapper. And it really doesn't do anything or serve any purpose for us as far as I can tell. So what I like to do is in this default 3D view, I'll come over here and I'll just turn default off. And now I can see that I'm selecting that actual level that the surface template is on. Okay. So, we can see we've got depth here. And I know I mentioned parametric constraints in those labels before. And I realized that I don't think there's any way to apply a parametric constraint to a surface template. Those really only apply to templates that are in a linear template or a corridor. So we set this to 1 foot, I believe, in our surface template. But let's say we know this pavement is, let's say it's 14 inches or something like that, just to give us a little bit, or 16. Let's say it's a little thicker. So in order to change that, I've got this pavement asphalt existing here. and we can see that it's at 1 foot. Let's just go ahead and copy this. And now it's copied. In order to paste it, you want to click the folder you want to paste it in, right click and paste. And we'll just call this pavement asphalt existing. Let's just call it 16 inches. And we'll double click that. And like before I said, you could go into this active template, go to those parametric constraints, and this still works within the template. So if I click on that and type -16/12 and hit OK, now I've got that added depth. If you go File, Save, and Close, now we should be able to go and apply that surface template to these additional areas up here. So this is kind of where, you know, looking at your pavement cores comes in, and you can always come and adjust this later on the fly. Another option would be to, instead of using another surface template, you could always come in here and hover over here and do an edit of the applied surface template, and that will bring up just the template that is attached to that terrain. So we're only editing that surface template. We're not editing the template that's in the library. We're just editing that one. So if I come in here and say parametric constraints again, and I want to make this one, let's make it 20/12, just something crazy so we can see the difference. Then if I hit OK, that will change that one. So if we come over here in our 3D view and make sure your 3D view is active. And this works a little different when you're in 3D. So I have dynamic turned on, which is what I usually do in 3D. The best thing you can do is like, you can grab this little crosshair and like snap it to a point. And that's now the point that you're rotating the view around, which makes it a lot easier to manipulate. So let's say we want to go like right here so we can see the difference. So you can see we've got a difference between that 12 inches along the one road and the 20 inches there. So we can definitely see the difference between those surface templates. And if we come over here, oops, missed clicking on that. Hold on. Well, it's got to click off. It got a little bugged there. All right, so we click here. We can see the difference in that one template that we modified versus the one that's from the library. So those are some options you have in changing those surface templates. The only downside to this template here is it is only available in this file. It's not in the library. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, that's basically one way that you can get all those surface templates in there. Now we can look at it in 3D view. Another way to look at things is you can attach this ALGNRD file, which I've already done. Turn that on, and let's set up some dynamic cross sections. So if I'm in corridors and I come over to the review section, do dynamic cross sections, let's select that corridor. Now it's asking me left and right, but maybe I don't know which direction that corridor runs in. So if I click on this and hover over, let the context menu come up and open the profile model down here, the arrows are telling me which way that alignment's going, which is really handy. So then I can come back to my dynamic sections and let's go left. Yeah, 40 looks pretty good. I just want to make sure that my envelope is encompassing the entire road, and 60 looks pretty good. We can maybe even go to like 50. That should be fine. And so right now the station is locked. It's locked to apparently the beginning of this alignment. You can either uncheck the station here or hit end on your keyboard. And let's just go to like 21 plus 70. So I can just type in 2170 and I'll click. And then my interval is just every time I click through my dynamic sections, how far am I going? So in this case, I want it to be 10. So if I start at 2170, my next click will be 2180, 2190, 22 plus 00, just like that. You could make it smaller if you want to really get in and see the detail of something changing, or you could make it longer if you're just looking at basic stuff. Now it's asking me which view to open. We'll come over here and open this view. And now we can see that we've got some depth in here. And a couple things I like to do with my dynamic sections is I like to center on current offsets. So what that'll do is if I zoom in here on this median, the next time I click forward, it'll stay on that median. If I were to change it to fit section, the next time I click, it'll fit the entire section. So you can see how it's going out to 40 left and 50 right. So my envelope that I created originally. And then center backbone, I believe that just centers the whole thing on the screen. But I usually like offsets because a lot of times I'm zooming in on something and I want to be able to like flick through and see, okay, yeah, ooh, see there's where that pavement kicked out and I can see the depth difference and all of that stuff. Another thing I like to do is do the vertical exaggeration of 2. Whoops. Stay with me, screen. 2. And that'll just exaggerate the verticals. Now I can better see the slopes. The depth is a little more apparent. And you can kind of click through and see that we've got depth to all of these pavement items. All right, now that we've got our pavement, let's get in here and start doing some shoulders. So let's turn that alignment off since we don't really need to see it right now. And I'm going to go back and start kind of closing off some of these shapes. So I want to smart match my red line again. And for right now, I'm just going to turn off this default 3D as well, so it's just out of my way. Come on. There we go. So this is kind of an interesting looking area right here. I can't really tell, like, is this shoulder? Is this concrete? Usually with a better survey, you might have some sort of delineation there. One thing we can do is go ahead and grab this aerials file and maybe try and figure out what's going on with the aerial. So it's still kind of hard to tell from there what's happening there. It looks to me like this shoulder kind of goes through here. Maybe if we go back this way and we can kind of look at what the existing ground is doing back here, it might give us a better idea of, and see, it's all just kind of flowing off to the side. So that's a little bit of a tricky one. One thing you could do as well is go look at Google Earth or Google Street View and get an idea of where that line is. But for simplicity here, let's go ahead and turn off this aerials file, and we're just going to assume that this is all driveway and this one is shoulder. So we'll just do that for now, just for simplicity's sake, and then I'll just turn off this active feature definition. Just be careful of that. If you are just drawing these using these place line tools and stuff like that, just make sure your feature definition is off there. So we'll close that off. And I'm just going to snap to the end of there and then do a perpendicular down to here like that. Same thing over here. Just trying to close off some shapes. And we'll just kind of do what we did here. I'm just going to snap to that point there and snap to this point. I don't want to do that. Let's just do perpendicular again there. So now we're just kind of closing pieces off. And in the same way, as things start going around this curve, it might be a good idea to like close this one off and close that off as well, so that this is one piece, this is one piece. Just kind of getting used to thinking about those all as singular pieces and being careful with making terrain models that are too big or extending around curves or whatever. So just kind of running along here. This is all one. So I don't really need to close that one off. That one looks all closed. I think as we go along here, just got shoulder across there, comes out there. All of this looks closed and we already closed that off. So now we can go about grabbing our miscellaneous 4 and creating the regions that we need for the shoulders. So you can see it'll start highlighting. And I'm not zoomed out enough to see that entire one. One trick you can kind of do is like zoom in, or you can zoom out, and then once you zoom in, you should be able to get it. So I've got that. We've got these pieces, all those in there. We've got that. and that. Okay. So now we've got all of those set up. And real quick, I will just go about creating those terrain models. So we'll just do this first one, and then I'll come back after I've created all the terrain models. You don't need to watch me do all that again. But again, we do a create clipped terrain model. And we're going to select this, select our clipping element. And the only difference here is there is an existing paved shoulder feature. So let's just make sure we're using that. That's the only difference. So make sure when you're creating these shoulder templates or shoulder terrain models that we're using existing paved shoulder. And we'll reset and external. I'm still using external, and we're done. So it created that right there. And we'll be back, and I'll create the rest of these real quick, and then I'll come back. All right, so now I'm back, and I've created all of the terrain models, and we can just do a quick check. Let me get this off here. I did turn the existing features back on when I was doing that so that I could see that I was making the terrain models. Otherwise, I couldn't tell if I was or not, unless I was looking at the 3D view over here. So we'll zoom in, and we'll just kind of take a look and see that the terrain models are following the boundaries that we want them to follow. See that they're all created. Got all of our shoulder in here. All right. So now we need to go back into that template again. And since we already, added in all of these new features, we can go to paved shoulder existing. And we see it has a depth of 0.5. And it's probably also got a parametric constraint on it for EOP pavement thickness. So if you need to change that, you can go ahead and do that. Again, you might have pavement cores, or you might just be assuming some depth here for the existing pavement. I would say 6 inches is pretty good, and we can just keep using that. So now that we've taken a look at that, we can just go ahead and come back over into the library view, and we'll just be using this surface template going forward. If you do need to create additional depths, you can do what I did with the pavement asphalt existing and make another template, or just modify the template in the file, whatever works for you. So I don't need to save anything because we didn't change anything. So I'll just go close out. And let's go about adding the surface template to all of these. So again, I've got to go select my paved shoulder existing. I've got that. So it looks a little bit different. They've got it set up so that the paved shoulder looks a little bit different. And if we come into our dynamic section view here, let's do this one real quick so we can see it. So again, I can just click through real fast. See, now I've got some shoulder depth that's showing as a different depth. So real quick, I'll go through and add the surface template to all of our terrains here, and we'll be right back. All right, now I'm done creating all of those, and we can just kind of flick through, and so you can see I can zoom in and out, and it'll stay on my offsets, but I can start seeing that, okay, now we're starting to get in. I should see some of that shoulder there. We get up to the side street, you can see the additional thicker pavement here, the shoulders coming out. So this is just kind of a back check to make sure that everything is doing what we expect it to do. And that's pretty much that. Next, we're going to talk about driveways. And it's pretty important to differentiate between a driveway, which is typically made of concrete and usually 6 inches of concrete, and a turnout, which is something kind of more like what we have here, which they have more radial returns and they're usually made of asphalt. And then we have other situations where, they show a driveway here, but it's just dirt. So how do we go about creating existing features for those types of elements? So one thing you might want to do before you start doing your driveways is turn on the aerials and kind of figure out what these turnouts are actually made of, turnouts or driveways in this case. And so you can see here, this first one here, this is probably all asphalt, but then it looks like maybe it switches over to concrete, or this could be some older asphalt or even dirt. It's probably just dirt. So that's one thing to consider there. Looks like we have an asphalt one there, asphalt, 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 but then we've got dirt here. And then here it looks like they just considered this, they showed all this as asphalt, so we already got that in the shoulder, but then this is just dirt. And this is just dirt. So sometimes it's good for the surveyor to maybe label what these things are actually made of. And so you might have some text in here that tells you that, but I don't see anything in here that's telling me what any of this stuff is. I don't see a text level in here that'll tell me anything. So what we might want to do is go ahead and, first off, we can turn off this existing features 3D. And let's start making our shapes for these areas. So I'm just going to smart match my red line here because I want to close this one off. Okay. And here, let's just close off from here to here. So we've got that shape. And then we can maybe just do this. So I'm not really concerned about the rest of this parking lot over here. Really just concerned about these driveways where we might potentially be doing some reconstruction of the driveway and cleaning things up as we come through here. So one strange thing we've got is right here, and I remember something in the survey about calling this area obscured. So real quick, I just want to maybe come in here and turn the overrides on so we can look at the triangles. And then something funny is happening, I think, because of this create existing features tool. I haven't quite been able to figure out exactly what it's doing. I think it's applying some sort of level filter to turn things on and off, but it seems to be messing with the way that this terrain model is getting shown. So if I come in here, again, I've got it on, override symbologies, yes. If I go to the GDTM, I've got all this stuff is off. So let's turn all this on, set it to default, but that's not doing it either. So if I come here, now I can see that all of those levels are also active in here. So let's just turn everything on. I'll just keep default off. For whatever reason, these triangles, they're on the correct level, but they're not showing up correctly for some reason. And I'm thinking it has something to do with this. I can't quite figure it out. But the whole idea is I want to see how this is being triangulated. And it looks like it's just this line is the one that I need to come in here and add. So let's just go smart match my red line. And we'll just come in here and snap there. So now we've closed that off. This one looks closed off. Sometimes it's good to, you can kind of snap to these triangles too, so you can know that the thing that you're closing off also closes off at a vertex here, at a triangle point. So that's a good idea. So we close this one off too. So all the rest of these are pretty well and closed off. So once we're done taking a look at that, making sure everything's closed off, we can just go back in here and turn the override symbology off. So now that we've got everything closed off, we need to kind of figure out what we're going to place as far as a surface template in these areas. So let's go ahead and start making some of our shapes here. Start making our clipping shapes. These are pretty quick. Got that. And these two. And that one. So now that we've got everything on, it might be a good idea to just turn this existing features back on. And those level overrides are screwing with me again. So everything is off. So let's just turn on our two surface template stuff here. We can just turn on DTEX. Just turn those things on so you can see how that tool does kind of mess with things that are on and off. So use it at your own risk. I mean, it might be good initially to use it to kind of get things cleaned up in the way you want it to look, but it does look like it's a little dangerous to use as far as turning levels on and off and maybe messing with the way this is being displayed. So let's go take a look at the templates that we have available. So we've just got edge, we've got sidewalk. There's a driveway existing, but driveway existing is going to be, if we look at the feature definition, it's going to be driveway EX, which is going to be probably more for concrete. You can see how this is 0.5, so it's 6 inches deep. This is definitely supposed to be used for concrete driveways. What I might end up doing is, since I kind of expect that these turnouts are probably similar in pavement design to the shoulder, I'm just going to go ahead and copy this and then paste it here. And we'll just call this turnout pavement existing. We can come in here. If I double click on that component here, I can see that this is on that shoulder paved EX component. I don't want that to be considered shoulder. Let's just go and put that on pavement asphalt EX again as well. And if we want, we can change this name here to Turnout Pavement EX. And you can just turn off the override. That's not important. So once we've got that, we've got our 6 inches of asphalt pavement here. So we can go ahead and save. And just to review here, we will turn on, see, it did it to the aerials again too. The aerial level is off. So you got to make sure. Usually aerials are placed on image attachment DP, so if that's off, your aerials are going to be off. Another thing that existing features tool is messing up a little bit there. So I know this one's going to be asphalt, this one's going to be asphalt, so let's just do these real quick and go to the terrain. We're just going to do the create clip terrain model and locate our main terrain clipping element. And here, let's just call this, we're probably just going to call this existing pavement unless there's another one. Let's see. So they do tend to add features to this with every release, not necessarily every release, but it's a good idea to see what new features are available to you. So that's why I'm kind of trying to catch up here, because I probably haven't done this exercise in a couple of versions. So I'm just kind of reviewing and seeing what's available to me. But existing pavement seems like it should work, and we can go ahead and just click. And as usual, we're using external. And these level filters are killing me again. See, like this is, I can see it over here. It's on DTMEX. So if I come back to my view one, do this. Figure out which one this is on. There it is, DTM triangles. So I need the triangles to be on for this to show up. Then we'll do the same thing over here. Okay, and I also want to do this shape up here. So I'm guessing that this is dirt, and the way I would find out is probably go look at Google Street View or do a field visit and figure out what it actually is. Typically better surveys might actually have some text in here that tell you what certain things are. Oh, did I not make a shape for that yet? No, it's there. And then I don't want this to be pavement. I'm just going to make this DTM. We'll just put it on driveway for now. So you can see we've got that in there. And so I want to go attach my surface template that we just created. This, where is it at? Turnout pavement existing. So we'll attach that to there, give that some depth. Come over to here. Turnout pavement existing, give that some depth. So I want to think about this one for a minute, because this is really just dirt. So do we really even need to give that a depth? The only reason I would ever even consider it is because if we cut cross sections, let's take a look at our cross sections here. Where are we at? Way down there. Come back this way and we can start seeing, okay, now I've got the pavement that I've added there. But once I get here, I can see that this surface is here, but if I were to cut cross sections and show them on the plan, I might want to show something there to kind of signify that it's a driveway of some sort, like it's packed down dirt or something like that. So maybe I do want to give it a little bit of a feature or something like that. But I typically would put that on something like miscellaneous. So if we go here, and let's just grab like, we'll just copy this one again. And we'll just call this turnout dirt existing. So double click that, make sure that you've got the red box around there, you're editing that one. Let's just change this to, let's see. I think I've been using like excess miscellaneous just for some dirt. That's going to change it yellow, I think. Yeah. And then let's just come in here with our parametric constraints. So it's still got that EOP thickness. That's fine. That just allows us to change this. Let's just do this to like 0.25 so it's not a huge thickness. Just something there so we know like, okay, that's supposed to be driveway. Okay. File save. Close. Now let's go add that feature template to here. Or surface template, sorry. Surface template. Turnout dirt. Okay, so we've got some turnout dirt there. So now we can see that there's turnout here. So one thing I want to make sure of when I'm doing this is, this might be a little bit advanced, but when you're using this miscellaneous, I want to check something here. And I want to go look at the feature definition for this terrain. So I want to look at, where's my surface template? Oh, mesh. Yeah, my meshes. So this has excess miscellaneous EX, and that should open up over here. Let's just open this up so we can see as things change. So that's great. So it's got a volume option of none. And there are several different volume options that are in here, like existing or design. I want this to be none because when I run my earthwork, I don't want this to see this as anything, because realistically, like, we don't need to remove this thickness of anything. In contrast, you can see that, let's keep this pinned out here. If I go look at shoulder paved EX, it's got an existing volume option. So it knows that this needs to be removed and will be removed through some other pay item like clearing and grubbing. So that's something you want to pay attention to. So if now that I've done this, I can see that excess miscellaneous EX does not have a volume option. So you're safe to use that for something like dirt driveways, and that will not affect earthwork in any way. So let's go to this one real quick. And I just want to show concrete real quick. Let's assume that, okay, maybe this aerial's a little bit old, and they went out here and they put a concrete apron right here. So let's go ahead and make sure we're on our miscellaneous 4. Let's create our region there. And we already looked and we had that driveway surface template in there. So we can use that for this spot. So let's create the terrain. Create clip terrain. Gotta find it. There we go. And then I want to make sure this is, again, we're already on driveway. So that's perfect. Make sure this is driveway. Get that one in there. Now let's go find that feature template. DTN, let's see, driveway existing. Okay. Let's just turn on, let's see, this is like 1. Let's go to like, let's get a little closer here. Let's go to 30. Perfect. So you can see that we've got some concrete driveway out here. And if we go look at that driveway EX, that's also showing up as existing. So it's assuming that that would be something that's removed prior to doing earthwork. So that's exactly what we need. So we've done 3 different types of turnouts. Essentially, we've got your asphalt turnout. We've got some asphalt over here, but then we also showed how to use excess miscellaneous when there's something like dirt. And we know that this dirt doesn't have a volume option, so it won't be affected by earthwork, or it won't affect earthwork, I should say. And then we use the concrete driveway option over here. All right, next let's get into making some curb. So curb is a little bit different than all of these other things we've been doing. We've basically been making terrains and applying surface templates to them. Curb is a little bit different. So what I want to do, I'm just going to collapse these so we have a little more space here, because we've done kind of looking at volume options and stuff like that. And from the topo, I want to make sure that all of my curb levels are on. So CG, face, EP back, let's turn those back on. And what I'm really interested in here is this curb and gutter back line right here. And let's go ahead and copy that in. Okay. And what we need to do is this curb gets a little bit tricky, because ultimately what we want to do here is either put a linear template or a corridor on here. We're probably going to just do a linear template, because we don't need to have all of the extra features that a corridor allows us to have. Linear template's much simpler. All right, now we're going to go ahead and use that drop tool. And usually I just come up and search here. You can find that drop element tool. I have it on my toolbar right here that I've created. But what I really want to do is just drop this, and now it's going to be into its lines, and it's not a complex element anymore. And we've got some curves here. I'm not really sure why this one isn't closed. It's kind of weird. It should close. What we can end up doing is maybe just let's go ahead and drawing. Let's smart match this curb line. Let's place an arc. So there's several different methods to placing an arc. We can do, let's do a start, mid, end. So we'll just do a start, a mid, and an end, and get some sort of arc like that. Not perfect, but close enough. So now what we need to do is, it's important to remember that a template gets really confused when it closes on itself, as in it's like a circular element like we have here. So like this ultimately would form like a big circle. So what I want to do is basically create 2 different complex elements out of this. So let's go ahead and turn off this topo for a second. So I want to put a feature on all of these lines first. So let's grab all of our lines. And it's not really, let's go ahead and find linear, existing, curb, curb back. I'll go slower so you guys can see that. Gosh. So it's in linear, existing features, curb, curb back existing, turn it on. And then we're going to do the same thing that we're doing before, where we go into the geometry tool here, and we're going to create civil rule feature. And now these are all ruled. And I want to create some complex geometry. So what I'm going to do is like group those individual elements together into a piece of complex geometry. But in this case, I want to do it manually. I want to start here. You can see that the direction that I'm going to go is shown by that arrow right there. So that's my first element. And I want to make sure the next element has that arrow in the same direction, same direction, same direction. And I'll just stop right here. And when I'm ready to stop, I can just click and then left click and then reset to complete. Now I've got a complex element right there. And what we need to do is come down here, open up the profile model, set an active profile, and then we'll do the same thing right here. So let's go in this direction, start complexing these elements together. Left click when you're done, right click, reset to complete. Come in here, set the active profile to the existing terrain. You can see that, we're starting to build up some 3D elements out there. So you can see we've got that 3D element is being created out here, and it's showing up in our reference of the default 3D model here too. So we'll just go ahead and turn that off a second. Okay, so let's go take a look at the template for curb existing. And we've got other ones in here. This is a special one that they've created, and we're not going to really get into that right now. That one's super complicated, and it's in an effort to be able to make existing subgrade terrains. That's what it's for. But this is the simple one. So that line we just created, that curb back, that's going to be our origin point, our curb back in top right here. So it's going to follow, this point is going to follow that horizontally and vertically based on that point. And it's going to come down here 1 foot, which is the thickness of our curb. It's going to come straight across. So right now this is constrained horizontally 0.5 feet from this point. And it's coming down 1 foot from the curb back in top. So it's still coming down a foot from here. What we have here is a horizontal feature constraint looking for pavement asphalt existing. I like to increase this a little more. Let's just say like 10. So all that's doing is we're only going out 0.5 feet here. And then it will look out an additional 10 feet to the right to try and find this horizontal feature constraint, which we can add as an external reference to the linear template. So we'll go ahead and hit apply on that. And then we'll go to the next previous point here. This curb back out top, it's horizontal from here. So that means it's going to be straight up and down. And it's just going up from this point and looking for the existing ground, which is the projected surface any direction. So let's go ahead and we'll save. And when you want to put a linear template on something, you come out here and it's this tool right here, apply linear template. And feature definition, let's make sure we're on final. And our template, even though it says curb existing there, let's go ahead and select it over here. Curb existing. Okay, we've got that. So now just follow the prompts. We're going to click for that. And you can hit Alt, which will snap you to the start. And then you can hit Alt again, which will snap to the end. And this is the direction. So with linear templates, you have the ability to flip which direction you want that template to go. So we want the template to go this way because ultimately we're going to have it looking out for that pavement asphalt. So you can see like it's only 0.5 in the template. So when we click this, so we've got our template, and see how it's very skinny right now. So what it's doing is here's our line right here for our curb back out, and then it's going down 1 foot, it's going over 0.5, and then it's shooting up and finding the existing ground. But we want it to find the existing ground at this edge of pavement. So what we need to do is come into our corridor tools, corridor reference, add a corridor reference. So let's locate our corridor. You usually want to click on the red little tabs here is the actual corridor. The orange one is the template. And let's select this one. We'll just select all of these so it knows to go. We just wanted to have both of those as a reference, because it may be that, you know, it needs both of them to find it. And you can see it goes out and it finds that. Let's take a look at that. Let's go back a bit. So you can see how we've got the curb here. Comes down, comes over, comes up. So you've got that curb element in there. And then going back to what we were talking about before, if we look at the curb EX, that's on a volume option of existing, so we know that that's going to play into our earthwork as well. That's good. Let's do the other side. Grab this, linear template. Yep. See, since I've already locked these two to the start and end, it'll do that. It'll go to the end. And make sure you're making it flip the right direction. Get that. Back up to your corridor reference. Add corridor reference. Select the corridor. Actually, right now, see what, this is a good thing to note. I still have this curb back highlighted. So I want to exit out of this command and make sure that I don't have curb back highlighted. I have nothing highlighted right now, and then start my corridor reference again. Add. So click that one, click that one. So we've got both of those. Now you can see we've got curb on the other side. So now we've got all of our templates that need, or all of our existing features that need depth. Let's take a look at this one real quick. So this one's kind of confusing to me. It seems like this is a traffic separator, but the topo doesn't really tell me that. It could be several things. It could be a couple things. It looks like maybe this is a curb that has some asphalt in the middle. So let's assume that's what it is for right now. So let's bring in our curb back. We'll copy that. And we'll go find our drop tool. I can do this while I still have everything selected, and I'm going to drop it. Okay. Let's turn off topo. And I do want to note, you can see how having this on pavement asphalt existing initially helped us over here, because we already had this line on the correct feature definition. If you remember from our horizontal feature constraint, it was looking for pavement asphalt existing. So because we had already drawn that on pavement asphalt existing, when we added it as a corridor reference, it went out and found that. So we've still got curb back existing. So let's just select all these elements and add that feature to them. Okay, geometry. And we're just going to do this. Okay. Then we'll go ahead and complex that together again. Let's just start, we'll start right here, like we did last time. And the reason I'm not doing automatic is because all of these lines are connected. Actually, that's a good point. Let me show you a little trick. Why is this not? Let's see, I think that got messed up. Looks like that one didn't want to do feature. Go ahead and redo. Does it have a feature on it? Yeah, it does. I don't know why this looks like this. It might be just because it's some sort of weird element. We're not worried about it moving or anything like that. What I did want to get to is, let's just take this and pull this arc back a little bit. So because I've made this so they're not connected, I can come in here with complex geometry, automatic, and it will automatically go all the way up to there. And then the same way I can go this way and do that. And then for some reason I can't adjust that right now. Let's Control Z that. So there's something weird about this element. So I'm going to delete that. Actually, I want to draw a new arc. So we're going to draw a new arc. And it's just going to be a dumb line. So I've got a new arc there. I'm going to delete that one. Let's just pull this back. And we'll add a feature to this. There. Now it looks like an arc. I think the issue is sometimes when you get topo elements, these arcs are not arcs. They're like B-spline. There's something called a B-spline curve. That's a arc that constantly changes radius, and they're kind of a pain in the butt. So now that we have that, we should be able to complex this together. And now this arc can be manipulated, and I can bring it, just drag it up and snap it to there. So now I've got my two curb lines. Let's just go ahead and add, oh, so I didn't add my profile to them. Okay, now that they're both profiled with the existing ground, we can apply the linear template again. And we're still locked to the beginning and the end, which is fine. Make sure we're flipped to the right direction. Good. And you'll notice that I'm still on that tool, so I can just continue on to this element. Begin to end. Make sure it's flipped the right direction. Click through the prompts. Now we're there. Let's go ahead and turn off topo again. Oh, it is off. Okay. Now we just need to go to corridors, miscellaneous, add corridor reference. And you got to find those little red corridor lines. Sometimes they're tough to find. And let's just add this. Goes out and finds that. Now we're still on that tool, so we can continue to do this. Find this other corridor here. So even though it's a linear template, it does call it a corridor. It's kind of weird how it works. But it does have a corridor, quote unquote, corridor line. So you just have to be aware of that. Click that. Okay. Now we've got that one going out. So we've made that curb in there. Right. Now what I think is happening in here is this area is filled with concrete. Let's just say, let's go look at templates we have real quick. We can probably use something like sidewalk concrete, which is 4 inches, or we can use the driveway existing. I'm guessing this is probably like 4-inch concrete. So let's just use that sidewalk template. But first we have to make a shape in there. So let's go ahead and get a shape in here. And it might be a good idea to, so you can get in there. If you turn off, this is for the templates, and this one's for the corridors. That will turn those off so we can better see this shape line in here. And go back to our terrain, create clipped terrain model here, and then so you can see I'm right clicking to try and get on that. It might be a good idea also to come and turn off our curve back so that we can see that. Because I put it on this -100, it's going to sit underneath that curve back element and make it tough for us to click on it. So that might be a good idea just to clear that out real quick with your levels. So let's just go ahead and do that again. Reset. And let's just call this existing concrete, because that's what it's going to be. External again. So now we've got this existing concrete in here. And let's turn on our existing features. We can select that terrain model, apply a surface template to it. Let's just add that sidewalk existing. And now we've got some concrete in there. Let's go take a look at, where are we at? Pretty close. So you can see how I've got it where it's curb on the side, but then there's concrete in the middle. So now we've got our depth. We can go and check our sidewalk EX, that new feature definition that just got created, and see that it's got a volume option of existing. So that means we're all good. I was going to just delete all of this, but I thought it'd be a good chance to show how I would go about deleting some of these surface templates and terrains that we've been creating too. There is a proper way to follow to do this. So odds are you're going to mess up and have to delete stuff. What you want to do is always delete the surface template first. So if you click the surface template, you have the option to delete that template. And then you can come in here and delete the terrain model. And if we come back in here and turn that template and corridor back on, if I click the corridor line, click that and hover over it, you can just delete the corridor, and that will delete the corridor and the template and everything that goes with it. And then we're going to delete. So never delete your shapes until you've made sure you delete your terrain model that's tied to it. So we can delete that shape as well. And let's turn this curve back on as well. And we'll go ahead and delete this as well. So let's consider what a traffic separator actually looks like. If we open up our design standards here, and I am in index 520-002, we can take a look at this section right here, and this is what I would expect to see from traffic separator. So what we really need to be able to do is go down from existing a little bit. We're gonna have a little bit of traffic separator. So really it's just gonna be this little lip, and then it's gonna go over, and the lip typically is the depth of the friction course. So like when they come in here, they'll do the structural course all the way underneath here, or all the way across. They'll put the concrete traffic separator on, and then they'll come with the final lift of asphalt, the friction course, and put that right up to the traffic separator here. So if this is what we have existing, this whole piece right here, all the concrete and asphalt and base is going to get removed. The concrete will get removed through removal of existing concrete. The asphalt and base will get removed through clearing and grubbing. And so we have to model this whole piece in here somehow. So that's what we're going to look to do. And I kind of want to do this similar to how the curb is being done. So let's go take a look at the template. And I'm going to copy this. We've already got this traffic separator existing in here, but they're doing that as if it's like a surface template, which doesn't make any sense based on what we just looked at. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this name and delete it. And then, well, if I copy and then paste here, now we've got curb existing 1. I don't know if this is going to work. Yep, traffic separator existing. Let's go in here. So basically what we have to do is we have to pick a side of the traffic separator that's going to be our origin point. Okay. And then it's going to go down a depth of the friction course, which typically, let's just say it's 1.5 inches. That's a pretty good value of friction course. Let's do that. So it goes down there. And let's call this EXFC. So existing friction course depth. Apply. Then if I go to the next point, or well, this point down here, not the next point, This depth needs to be the exact same thing. So if I change that to EXFC depth, give it a label, let's just hit apply real quick and I'll show you how this works. So this is now we've given it the ability to be controlled with a parametric constraint. And since I've already set it there, see how the blue boxes are here? I can just go ahead and do that. And this point's a little messed up because we need to, let's just do vertical real quick. It's messed up because it's only got a horizontal point and project to surface. So wherever that point was when project to surface was chosen is where it stays vertically. So let's just go ahead and change it back to vertical from, what was it from? Hold on. I'm going to close that and not save. I want to check something real quick. So right now it's horizontal to curve bottom out. Let's just make it vertical to this guy right here, and we'll just say 0. Okay. So it looks like that. Now we know it's above, and we can change it back to project to surface. Simple. So now I've got the traffic separator, so let's turn this over to a traffic separator existing, and we'll call it traffic sep existing. Okay, so now it turned orange. So the next thing we want to do is add that pavement section in there. So if I grab my pavement asphalt existing, this is the one that we're using adjacent to this traffic separator, I can bring this in here. And while I was doing this, I decided to initially just snap it right here. If you bring it in and the cursor turns white, you are basically bringing it in on that point. But I don't want to do that because there's an issue with getting this thing to fit within this template that didn't go right. So I'll explain that once I get there, but I'm just going to have this kind of lifted off a little bit so it's its own point. And then I want to take a look at this point right here. And right now it's constrained to that pavement in there. I'm just going to go ahead and change that. Let's show that again. If you click this point right here, this button, you can go choose which point is the parent one. So I want that to be horizontally to there. And make sure that's 0. And I want it to be vertically to here as well. And make sure this is -1. You can see how that changes. Now I want to go, now by the same thing, you can also change the point properties that you're on by clicking this and choosing another point. So I want to do the same thing to this point. We want to be horizontal from here of 0 and vertical from here of -1. Okay. Now, since we've got these points out here and they are now ruled to something else other than here, I can just go ahead and right click and delete both constraints, and that makes it green. So that means I can just move this point around without it affecting anything else. I'm just going to move it and place it on here. Once it turns white, that means it's going to occupy the same space. It's going to be at the same exact point as this point that I'm hovering over. So if I do that, now I've got 2 points on top of each other. Right click those points, say merge points. And I want to delete that pavement out so that this CB bottom out remains. And then we'll do the same thing over here. This already is, this was the original origin, so it doesn't have any constraints right now. It's just free floating. So if I go ahead and move that point, it just moves around. And we'll put that on that CB in bot, make sure it's white. And then we'll right click, merge, and remove that point. And now I have that pavement depth that will match the adjacent pavement depth along with my traffic separator component in here. So let's go ahead and file save that. All right, now that we're back in the model file, we can start getting things set up to place a corridor. So what I want to do is, I've got this line work here right now, and it's not really conducive to making a corridor since it's kind of wrapping around on itself. And since we followed the method of not making a hole in our template, we just kind of created our templates around the holes. None of these are ruled to any of our terrains, so we can kind of manipulate these however we really need to. And so the first thing I want to do is drop these elements and start putting them back together in a way that's going to help me out in my corridor here. So again, you can go up here and type drop. And if you hover over drop element, it'll say all the locations where it is. I'm just going to keep using my drop that I have in my toolbar here. So we'll drop that, and it, for whatever reason, drops to the green lines here. I'm not quite sure why it's doing that. I think it's because I originally brought those in on that. And what I want to do is, right now my settings have this transparency and this priority, so I'm just going to put those back to 0 for transparency and maybe make this like 200 for priority, so that the lines that I rule here end up sitting on top of everything else. So because these lines are already ruled, I just need to put a feature definition on them. So right now they don't even have a feature definition. So if we come in here and select, I want to select all of these along this top line here. And what that's going to do is I'm basically setting my alignment where that origin point of the corridor is going to run along. It's going to be right along here. And like I said, they're already ruled. So instead of coming down here and creating civil rule features, we can use this toolbar and set the feature definition. And I noticed this is maybe a little bit different than it was in the past. I don't know if this was all here, but you want to make sure that the feature type you're choosing is linear. And then you come in here and you find your linear existing features, pavement, pavement asphalt existing. And since we have all of those checked, you can see I've got 8 selected elements. I'll data point to apply that feature definition. And we've got that feature definition in there. So the rest of this, I need to put this on the feature definition that matches in the template that we're going out and searching for with our corridor reference. So if we go look at this point, I believe it is, or the one above it. It could be the one above it. So that's coming out and finding pavement asphalt existing. So yeah, it's just coming out and finding pavement asphalt existing. It's searching out here. I don't necessarily want to, let's see if we can find miscellaneous. Yeah, let's do traffic separator existing on that. Change that up so that it's coming out and looking for it, because I want it to be something different from the other side of the line essentially. So let's change that and we'll come and save and close. So now I can put the remainder of this line on traffic separator existing. So this has a bunch of elements to it. So I'm just going to drag select and get all of those. And then we'll start selecting all of these elements. It's kind of hard to see with the green line underneath there, but we'll get them all selected. Just drag select this. Let's select that. Oh yeah, because I didn't complex that yet. So we've got all that selected. Let's go back to our tool here. And we'll find miscellaneous, traffic separator existing. And then it should update the name. So we'll go ahead and complex that. So we've got that line on traffic separator existing. Let's go ahead and turn off miscellaneous 4 so we can see those lines. Now what I want to do is create some complex geometry here. Just to make this so I can do automatic, I'm just going to pull this line back a little bit like this so that these two lines aren't touching. And I want this to go this way. So if I start it over here and make sure I'm on automatic, let's first do this. We'll tag that and turn this on so that when I create the complex geometry, it's going to create that complex geometry on traffic separator existing. So I want to select the first element, make sure the arrow is going in the direction I want it to go. And we can see it creates that complex element. Now it's going all the way around. So I'm going to leave that the way it is right there. Grab this. And let's create that piece of complex geometry too. Okay, now that's complex. And we can just drag this point over to here. So they're now closed. Now I need to put a profile on here. So let's go grab the existing ground. Okay, now it's got a profile. Now that it's got a profile, I can put a corridor on here. So you could use a linear template. I'm just going to use a corridor because I just like corridors better. Because I've already built, well, let's do a linear template in this case, because the way I've built the template, you know, if you had chosen to do your pavement asphalt on this side, you could then flip the linear template and have it go this way. And the only thing we really need to add to this is a corridor reference anyway. So let's go with linear template for this. If you find that you need some more settings, you could go with a corridor later. Let's find traffic separator existing. So here's our traffic separator. So I've got that. And right now I'm locked on the start, which I want to be anyway. But if you ever want to unlock it, it says right there on the cursor, Alt. If you hit Alt, it unlocks it. And then if you want to lock it again, you just hit Alt. So I'll stay locked to the start and locked to the end. And then I'll pick the side that I want it to flip. So I want it to come this way and start looking for that traffic separator. And we'll complete. You can see it's really tiny because that's how small I've drawn it inside the template. Now if I come in here to my corridors and we get our bucket, we grab this, you can do external reference, add new, and since we've complexed this entire thing together, it comes across, finds that, we've got something like that. So everything's kind of matching up. So you don't really need to worry about the top of the component because of the way this goes. And the more I'm looking at this, the more I think this is probably curb, just based on this, the way this looks. It looks like E-curb to me. But this is basically how we would want that to look. So you can see we've got that in there now. All right, now that we have a majority of that traffic separator done, we still need to finish these noses. And these noses are a little bit trickier. And I've been trying to kind of come up with a way to do this the simplest way possible while still filling this entire shape. And so what I've come up with is, what I want to do is make a terrain that sits down underneath like this. So the way we set this template up originally was to come down the depth of the friction course, the existing friction course, which was 1.5 inches, so 0.125. And what I want to try and do is have a terrain that just sits in here, and then I can put a surface template on there to go down and fill the rest of this area. So we need to go about kind of creating our lines here for doing this surface template. So I'm going to start off here. We're going to go into roadway design, plan profile 2D lines, and construction lines white dash. And I'm going to go to geometry. Inside horizontal, we'll click lines and line from element by angle from element. I'm going to click on here. And now as soon as I clicked on that line, I am kind of snapped to that line, if you will, and kind of dragging along this line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tentative click so I get to the end point, and then left click. And now it's asking me what angle I want to go at. So I want to go 90 degrees to this line. So if I do that and go 90 degrees, now I have a construction line that's basically running right here along this 90-degree line. So I just drew that. Whatever priority you have set up here is the priority it's going to draw on here. I can see I gave it this priority. I'm going to actually turn this down to 200 because the lines that I'm going to draw next, I want to sit on top of here and make it easier for them to select. So you can see how this is like 200. So that's how we drew those initially. Now I'm at 300 and I'm just going to go find my construction lines red. And we'll do a single offset partial. And I want to go just from the beginning of this existing traffic separator, swing around, and I'm going to turn on my intersection snap, and we're going to snap right there. And then I'll do the same thing along here. And I can just snap to the end of that line since that's where it's stuck anyway. And you can either use intersection snap or you can come snap to the end of this line. We'll just use intersection snap, and I want to make sure that the construction line's white dash and the traffic separator existing lines are the ones that highlight, so I can get that snap there. So the next thing I want to do is put a profile along here, but I want it to be down 1.5 inches. So if I select this and open up the profile model, now I want to use the tool up here in geometry, vertical, profile offset transition. We'll come down to our profile view, select the existing ground, and you can either type in minus 0.125 or you can type in minus 1.5 over 12, and that'll do minus 0.125. Make sure you're on construction lines red feature definition still, and you can kind of just snap to the end of the view here, and then come all the way over to the other side of the map or the view and snap to that side. And we don't want to mirror it. So now I've got a profile in here, and I want to set this as the active profile. So now that I've done that, you can kind of see it in here. Snap to the edge here. See, I've got a profile running along right there. So now what I need to do is get this profile to kind of cap things off. I need it to run right down that line right there. So there's a pretty awesome tool in here, and this is a good tool to use in a lot of different circumstances for when you want to kind of like rule a profile to another profile or another element. So this is up here in this vertical, and it's called profile intersection point. So if we choose that, it's asking us locate element to show intersection. So I want to grab the element. I kind of want a profile here essentially. And I want to show which elements it intersects. So the first one I'll pick is this one right here, the existing asphalt. And the second one I'll pick is this red line, but I want to be down here near the end point. And what that does, if you open up the profile model for this, is it puts these little dots here. And actually, now that I have this open, I didn't want to select the white line there because you'll see why. Let's go and do that again. And I want to select here, but I want to select up here, and you'll see I'll get a dot 1.5 inches below the existing ground. So I can delete that. And then I just want to do a profile between these 2 points. I want to make sure I'm snapping to these 2 points so that when I see this line, I've got rules here. So that means if I adjust the offset of this profile to like 3 inches, for example, these points will drop down to 3 inches as well, and they'll take this profile with it. Very handy tool to use. A lot of different applications for that. So we want to go ahead and set that as the active profile. You can see now we've got a line right down there. And let's go ahead and create a terrain for that. So we're just going to do a terrain from elements. We're going to grab, let's bring this up here so you can see what we're doing. We're going to grab this line and this line. And let's use DTM existing traffic separator. And we can just call it that, that's fine. And reset when done. And we'll data point through everything. Now you can see I've got a terrain right here. So if we go, let's see, where are we here? So if we click back through here, you can see I've got a terrain that kind of cuts through the bottom of there. It's not perfect, but ultimately what we're trying to do is just close this area. So let's go ahead and open up the template library, and we're going to take a look at this traffic separator existing, but we're going to copy this a second, paste it right in here again, and we'll just call this traffic separator nose existing. And I'm going to make some modifications to this to just make it a surface template, basically. So the first thing I want to do is I'm just going to completely delete this traffic separator component, and it's going to make a lot of these points go green because they were all dependent on that. So what we need to do is ultimately we want this point to sit up here at the origin, but I need to now rule all these points before I move that. So what I want to do is, since this is the depth of pavement that I want, if I go right click here, add constraint, full constraint to the point above it, you can see it's giving me that vertical depth of 0.125 or 1 minus 0.125, which is 0.875. So that's the depth I want. And typically the way you handle components with depth is you always want to like rule across the top and then rule straight down to points below. So if I go ahead and right click, add constraint, full constraint on this point to CB and bot, you can see it's just giving it a horizontal offset, vertical offset. And then this one is a little bit trickier. Let's just go into that point. Not tricky, but we don't want to just rule it to one point. So I want it to be horizontal to the point above it. And then I want it to be vertical to the point across from it. So that if this point moves out, this point will move out with it. If this point moves down, this point will move down with it. And now you can see if I go ahead and move this point, I've got one brick here. The only problem is I don't have any, it's not snapping for me really well right now. So if you go to your tools, options, typically you have like an FDOT one here. For some reason I don't. Sometimes it disappears or it doesn't load or whatever. But the standard FDOT one is 0.1 steps like this. Then you can apply fixes, and we usually have prefixes. So it's LT underbar. So that's just like what's going to come before each point. We can probably get into that a little more in a template video, and I think I have actually gotten a little more into that in a template video. But if you want to save those preferences, you can just go ahead and save, or save as, sorry, FDOT, and now you've got them saved, and you can hit OK. And now you can see when I go right click and move this point, I'm like going at the step, so I'm going 0.5, 0.4, 0.3, so it's easier to make sure I'm snapping right to 0, 0 here. So if I go ahead and save that and close and come over to my terrain model here, if we attach that surface template and make sure we select, even if it's up, if you've made changes to it, I suggest go and select it again. Go ahead and click through here, and you can see we've got a surface template, so we should be able to get all of that closed in there. If we go and rotate this around, you can see it's all closed in at the bottom too. And that's really what we're looking for, is to make sure that we've got a nice continuous line across the bottom here. So that's given our traffic separator some depth, both in the nose and along the length of the traffic separator. And so you could go ahead and do the other nose the same way. It would be good to note to make sure that your friction course is 1.5 inches, or at least you're using whatever that friction course is. Pay attention to your existing pavement depths. You might need to make changes to those existing surface templates to comply with the depth of your existing pavements. But I think that's pretty much all I want to show here in the existing features. We've gotten through modeling a lot of different things, shown how to do existing pavement in several different ways, and I think ultimately we settled on kind of dividing things up so that we didn't have to create holes or anything like that. We did some shoulder, we did some driveways, we did some curb over here, and then originally we did this as a curbed median with some pavement, or some concrete pavement in the middle, and then we switched over and did it as a traffic separator as well. So that's pretty much everything you're going to encounter. We also did a driveway that has that isn't concrete. It's miscellaneous. So those are all good things to keep in mind as you're doing your existing feature modeling. And I hope you guys learned something today, and thanks for watching.